this on? Yes, it is.
Movies Revelation.
Google me, bitch!
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. It is Thursday, July 25th. So Joe Biden didn't explain anything about why he dropped out of the presidential race during his address, which was relatively flub-free. So we're going to talk about that and talk about the implications of him resigning as president or dying in office, or if Kamala Harris takes office. So let's get into the headlines. All right, first headline up is from Barron's. U.S.-Canada jets intercept China-Russia planes near Alaska. Now, the problem with this article is that the Barron's, or the AFP, said U.S.-Canada jets intercept Russia and China planes near Alaska. Well, that doesn't sound very threatening, does it? It just, they're planes. And so they were intercepted. It's not a big deal. The New York Post gets a little better when they say Chinese and Russian military planes tracked, intercepted off Alaska NORAD. The NORAD says. So this is a little bit closer to the truth, but what people don't understand about the truth is actually this, is the BBC reports the truth. China and Russia staged first joint bomber patrol near Alaska. Now, this is an obvious provocation and threat because China and Russia are teaming up with their air forces, so they are now militarily aligned. Now, they did this right before and during Joe Biden's speech to the nation. And so they were expecting him to resign, leaving Kamala Harris in charge, which means she would have no way of being commander-in-chief during such, not only an exercise, but if there were eventual attack, she wouldn't know what to do. I don't even know if Joe Biden's in charge or if Kamala Harris would be in charge, but this is one of the things that they're doing. They're taking all the opportunity here to probe. It's a probe, actually, to probe the weaknesses of the United States Homeland Defense. Going on to other headlines here, more serious as well, from Reuters. Russia warships make Havana port visit this weekend, say Russian news agency. So Russia and China are preparing for World War III because that is indeed what the West is preparing for and provocating. That's their provocation. So going on to the real news on everybody's mind is last night's address by Joe Biden to the nation. This is from BBC. Biden sidesteps hard truths in first speech since quitting race. He did indeed sidestep the truth because he didn't explain why he dropped out of the race. He said it was for democracy. Well, actually, if you were going to be defending democracy or you're taking actions to protect democracy, well, what about all those primary voters? They cast their ballot for you, Joe, and you're just saying, fuck you, what you wanted doesn't matter. I'm now telling you that although you voted for me, you're now voting for Kamala Harris. And we said this, many people on the right, conservative media, etc., said a long time is, if you vote for Joe Biden, it's a vote for Kamala Harris. Well, now it's literally true that the fact is if you voted for Joe Biden in the primary, now your vote is just given to Kamala Harris, however you may or may not feel about her. So the headlines go on to say this, again from BBC, Biden says he quit presidential race to unite party and country, whatever that means. The summary here from this article, U.S. President Joe Biden said he ended his re-election bid to unite the country and party. There's a quote, there's a time and place for new voices, fresh voices, and yes, younger voices in a rare televised address from the Oval Office. He says it's time to pass the torch to the new generation, putting aside personal ambition. The point here is that this was not a live address. Now, they made it sound like there was a pool reporter in there and everybody was there clutching their pearls and weeping at Joe Biden giving up the torch. I doubt that this was in fact the case. I believe that it was more than likely recorded, given that he really didn't make too many flubs, and considering that it was likely that he had a stroke, considering his absence from public view, and of course, his slurring during the quote-unquote live phone call during Kamala Harris's giddy nomination acceptance, I guess you could say, at the campaign headquarters. Now, speaking of acceptance of the nomination, Bloomberg is reporting Democrats finalized plan to nominate Harris before the convention. Reading from the article here, a panel of Democratic stalwarts will meet Wednesday to complete a rule change. A rule change to allow Vice President Kamala Harris to accept their party's nomination for president weeks in advance of the party's convention in Chicago, where that is usually done. A virtual roll call will take place the first week of August and formalize the results of a remarkable 32-hour blitz in which Harris won the support of a majority of delegates without a single challenger emerging. Very strange. President Joe Biden threw his support behind the vice president shortly after announcing he no longer seek nomination. The idea of virtual roll call emerged in May in order to make sure the Democratic ticket would have time to get on the ballot in several states with early filing deadlines, party leader said. In Ohio's August 7th deadline was prompted the rule change, even though the state pushed back to September 1st. The point here, this is completely undemocratic. Now you're saying, well, it's the electors. Well, the electors aren't voters. Electors are supposed to cast their ballot, their elector ballot, in line with the way the public votes. And that's, and like many people say, party rules state that you don't have to do that. The party can actually pick their nominee. And then what they do, and particularly in the Democratic Party, is force the superdelegates to vote the way they want them to. That's what they did with Hillary Clinton. They just said, forget all the Bernie Sanders supporters and vote for Hillary Clinton, and the superdelegates indeed did that. So the delegates and superdelegates do what the party says. They don't have to be in line with the voters, and so that's not really democratic. And it has nothing to do, as I said, is that 72 million people voted for Joe Biden to run for president. Now he's dropping out of the race, and it doesn't matter. You know, many people could not feel very good about Kamala Harris that voted for Joe Biden, but it doesn't matter now. You don't get a new primary. And they glossed this over because the Democrats were talking, including not Benny Thompson, Clyburn, was talking about, yeah, we're going to have a mini primary, but I still support Kamala Harris, and so it doesn't matter. They're trying to unite the party in a way to try to defeat Donald Trump. And like I mentioned before, they just have to make it close enough. They just have to make it close enough so they could cheat, because if you're 10 points behind, there's no way that all of a sudden on election day, miraculously Joe Biden wins. No one's going to believe that. So they have to make it, and they're going to continue push out these polls that say, Kamala's ahead by a point. Trump is ahead by a point. Look, they're dead even, when in all, if you take the margin of error, Trump is realistically ahead by 5 to 10 points. Moving on to other headlines here. New York Post is reporting Obama doesn't believe Kamala Harris can beat Trump, which is why he hasn't endorsed her, according to sources. Well, no, and that's why he doesn't like Kamala Harris, and so, because he's an intellect and she is anything but. And so my wife got really pissed off last night because she was arguing with people on Facebook about whether Kamala Harris is a legitimate candidate and whether or not that, she should lead the country. And the fact is that she shouldn't. And, they're just saying that you're a hater, you hate women, or you hate people of color, or that's your problem. And if that's at least my wife said it's about policy, not personality. It doesn't matter who the person is. The fact is Kamala Harris is just going to keep forwarding failed policies of the socialists. But they don't understand that. They're saying you're a hater, you don't like women, and my wife said I am a woman. But that's not the point. It's the failed policies and whether or not you can articulate successfully those policies, because if you have failed policies, you're going to need to articulate them in such a way that you could pull the wool over the eyes of your constituency and say, don't forget about all that. Look at all our accomplishments. They take failures and make them accomplishments, and their blue Kool-Aid drinking constituency doesn't know any different. All right, more headlines. New York Post. Trump says 25th Amendment shouldn't be invoked against Biden. Claims dangerous Kamala Harris is worse than he is. Obviously. Biden has been an astute politician for many years. Okay, whatever. He didn't really win in 2020, and we all know that. I mean, they're not, the media is going to keep saying that's dangerous speculation that, come on. It's just, everybody is aware of what's going on. And we're going to take this mindset when we look at the assassination attempt and what people are saying and how that basically all lines up to what is going on here, because it's forget about Donald Trump. Let's start looking back at the race again. And the mainstream media didn't even miss a beat. They continued attacking Trump even though he was almost shot and killed. Okay, well, so let's get to the crux of the matter here. Daily Mail FBI director cast doubt on whether Trump was struck by bullet during assassination attempt. So if you didn't see the hearing, the congressional hearing about Christopher Wray, now Christopher Wray is an intelligence officer, so he knows how to answer questions. So he says, he talks about how many shots did the shooter take, and Christopher Wray says, we recovered 8 shells on the rooftop near the shooter's body. Well, that doesn't mean anything, because before the FBI even got there, although they were there, Homeland Security was there, 8 shells mysteriously appeared, and he couldn't even confirm caliber and so forth and so on. So that's my problem. And so what we're talking about now is not necessarily confirmation, but as far as the narrative is concerned and the authorities are concerned, 9 shots. So 8 shots by the gunman, which I counted those the day of, and then 1 shot from the sniper. And then there was some speculation that there were 2 shots. There was 1 shot from the sniper that missed, and then there was another shot that hit. Well, the reason they had to retract that was because if the 1 sniper shot missed, you would have found that bullet hole in the building behind. So they didn't. So here's the scenario we're going to get in just a minute. Now, the New York Post is also reporting what Christopher Wray reported was the gunman searched how far was Oswald away from Kennedy before the assassination attempt. It's not even the same. First of all, Oswald was firing a bolt-action rifle, apparently sticking his rifle out the window of the book depository building, which would never happen from a sniper. And it was 300 yards plus. So it's twice the distance, at least, than what Crooks was. So why would that even matter? If you were at the range, he was using his rangefinder purportedly. Why would you be at the range? You shoot 200 yards at the range, and then you're using your rangefinder to figure out how far you were. But he wasn't, he wasn't calculating wind speed or anything like that. What you really need is like what you saw in the movie Shooter with Mark Wahlberg, testing wind speed, which is almost more accurate than usually with the eye. if it's not over 300 yards, you don't even need a rangefinder. You could tell that that's one football field, two football fields. What's the, you know, if you miscalculate 125 to 150, that's not going to affect your trajectory whatsoever. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to some graphics here. Now, this is a New York Times graphic. Gunman on rooftop with rifle, shooting at the president. And we're going to get into what we know so far. So here's what we know so far. We had a delegation go to the building, go into the roof. So in the building behind the rooftop, exactly in the office overlooking the rooftop, exactly over where the gunman scaled the pipe to get on the roof, exactly right over in that window was an ESU sniper team. So the ESU sniper team is a multi-jurisdictional unit. So there are people from all different counties involved there. Do they know each other? Do they not know each other? From the body cam footage, once we enhanced the audio, we found out that one of the snipers' name was Chris. Now, Chris took the picture of Crooks right before he scaled the building. Now, this is what happened. Apparently, the two-man sniper team who was in that window overlooking the rooftop, and we don't know if there was more than two people in that window, left that room and their post in a gross dereliction of duty to go on the ground to look for this individual who, if you see from the way they took the picture, he was at the base of the building, in between those two buildings, standing around. So he looked suspicious. So they lost sight of him. Where did the guy go? Who knows? Maybe he hid behind the air conditioning unit when he went to get the rifle. And before waiting around or ordering people on the ground to go look for him, they left their post. So it's sort of like with the Jeffrey Epstein, the guards fell asleep. They left their post. During that time they left their post, Crooks purportedly scaled the building, got on the roof, then was pointed out by rally goers. So check this out now. So then they're pointing, screaming that, so if the snipers were on the ground, they could have shot the guy from the ground where they were if they heard these people. But where did the snipers go? There's no evidence that these ESU snipers were ever on the ground. There's no indication. We don't have any footage of ESU snipers on the ground looking for this guy. And if they were on the ground, they would have went down, outside, and directly where that guy was. And at that very time, they would have heard the rally goer screaming, there's a guy on the roof, and they could have scaled the pipe and shot him. Or went back on the roof. Why did they abandon their post? Now, let's get to the tricky part. Before I go to the next slide, I just want to say to people watching, thank you for joining me live 10 a.m. on Rumble every day. But please engage the channel, give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe, leave a comment, any comment, short comment, well appreciated, and most importantly, share the podcast. All right, let's go to the next slide. So this is one I picked up off the internet today. Now this is a speculative second shooter theory. Now, this is misinformation, I should say, because they say, here's the patsy. Now, he climbed up over here, way to on the western side of the building, right under this window. He climbed up. This is the middle window in the building here. This is where the sniper team was. Or was it over here? Hard to say. I think maybe it was over here, the very last window. Either or. Okay, we can't be sure. Somebody could verify that and put it in the comments for me. Appreciate it. Now, this idiot says the sharpshooter was in this window. Now, there's a tree in the way for the line of sight to Trump. It could have been over here, but that wouldn't account for the trajectory of the bullet that almost killed Trump. So here's the patsy, here's the sharpshooter. My trajectory is here. I put a sniper on this tallest roof here in a white suit. This follows the exact trajectory how Trump was hit. I mean, there's a crane in the way. Hard to say if this would have been in the line of sight. He could have been anywhere over here. You know, he could have moved over. No one would have even noticed. And that's so high, no one could see him from the ground. The only person that could have seen him was somebody from the water tower. Now, we also, before I go back to this slide, I just want to say, we also have to understand what Alex Jones's crew discovered was the guy shot was wearing shorts, purportedly. He could have slid down the roof after being shot, and his pant legs could have went up. But the guy looked like he was wearing shorts, the guy who was shot. Otherwise, same clothes. But we know Crooks was wearing long pants. All right, that being said, let's go back to the next slide. The same slide I was looking at before. So this is where Crooks was originally, where he would have had a clean line of sight, right, on the western side of the building to Trump. Why you would move over here to obscure your line of sight more by the bleachers, by this crane, right? Some people speculate there was a shooter in the window of this front building, where the building where Crooks was found on top of. And some people are putting a sniper in this window here, where the ESU team was. Now, the issue with this is what I'm saying is the ESU team left the room. We don't know if they left another sniper in there, which could have resulted in that sniper taking the shot. But the trajectory is not correct for the bullet that hit his ear. Now, one of the other problems here is the fact that Christopher Wray said, oh, it may be, he said, it may be shrapnel that hit Trump's ear. Now, shrapnel from what? So shrapnel would have come from whatever the bullet hit, and then, you know, he could have said a bullet fragment, which would have been more correct. But that's not, if you're shooting at somebody's head, that's a shot. That's a trajectory. That's not, to me, and if you look at the wound, it looks like a bullet wound. It doesn't look like shrapnel, because shrapnel would have flown in a different way and would have been spinning. It's a whole different ballistic than what you get from a rifled barrel. So I disagree with, and he's a professional. So right there he's casting doubt. So he's on board with the Democrats. If Christopher Wray, he's on board with the establishment. If Christopher Wray is casting doubt on the bullet theory, he's part of the problem. He's on board. So the feds are involved just from that statement, among other things. Not to mention you had a Secret Service director obfuscating completely about what was going on. And Christopher Wray also said, well, we found 8 shells were recovered. 8 bullet casings were recovered on the rooftop. So we don't know. Did you look in his magazine? Did you count how many? I mean, these are the questions that reporters need to ask, or even people on the committee, the congressional committee, need to ask. What kind of magazine was in the rifle? How many rounds did it hold? How many rounds were missing? Was there a scope on the rifle? None of these questions were asked. Where was Crooks hit? Was he hit in the face? How many rounds, and that Ray didn't answer this, how many rounds did the Secret Service shoot? So we don't know all this. I still put a second shooter theory here. On this rooftop, the trajectory matches. That's why they had to move the shooter over or the shooter had to be moved over or was told to move over. But still, why would you move over this way? The mystery moving tree is not where some photographs put it. He would have had a clear line of sight where he got on the roof here, a better trajectory. Here, why would the shooter move over, take time to move over, when he was seen here by the crowd that was over here to the west? He was seen on the roof here. Was he running away from the crowd? Why would you run away to a less advantageous place? You wouldn't. You want a frontal kill shot. There was this red crane here. Maybe you move over a little bit. You know, that would line you up here. I mean, as far as I know, there could have been shooters anywhere back here. But the trajectory has to match. I still call second shooter. They don't leave the system. The establishment never leave things up to chance, especially since the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, where the Muslim extremists didn't park the van where they were supposed to park it. See, there was a structural assessment, and the whole building was supposed to collapse in on itself, you know, because they had to park the van full of explosives near a certain column, which they didn't do because they're stupid. And so that's why when you had 9/11, they don't leave things up to chance. They have their patsies get in position and do all these things. But with JFK, if you want to make sure it happens, you put a second sniper in there. So that's what I believe exactly what they did. And I also believe that Crooks thought he was a secret agent and that he was teamed up with people, because you see him wandering around the front of the building like he's looking for somebody. And that leads me to believe that he thought he was in league with somebody, and he probably got a text or encrypted communication, get on the roof, asshole. And so he did what he did, and take your shot or whatever. And so as soon as he fired, that's when the kill shot came. And luckily, Trump moved his head just in time. All right, more stories here we have from AFP. World's richest 1% gained $40 trillion in decade. So since 2014, which was when Obama was president. So the narrative and what is happening, the agenda, is happening as planned. It is a funneling of wealth to the elite, to the top 1%. So, and if you know anything about what happened economically during COVID, this actually accelerated. A lot of this money, at least 10 to 12 trillion, happened just during the 2 years after COVID. So I'll just read from the story where Oxfam reports. The world's richest 1% increased their fortunes by a total of $42 trillion over the past decade, Oxfam said Thursday, ahead of a G20 summit in Brazil, where the taxing of the super rich tops the agenda. And before I go to the communists in Brazil, I just want to say that I don't have a problem with taxing the super rich. It depends on how it's done, and it depends what happens with those revenue. To what extent, you also have to know. You also have to understand is that affects economic output. So if the rich people that you're taxing are employing people, they might cut back, and that'll cut jobs, whatever. So there is, there's an outcome there. Now, going back to this story, Brazil has made international cooperation on taxing the super rich a priority of its presidency of the G20, a group of countries representing 80% of the world's GDP. I'm not going to go into the summit itself, but Brazil is now governed by a communist country, so it's not surprising that they go down this route. Like I said, there are consequences for taxing the super rich, so you have to be aware. Like I said, corporations are different because corporations employ, rich individuals don't necessarily employ. But there are going to be consequences for taxing them. I'm a low tax guy. I believe it's better for economic growth and tax revenue if you keep taxes low across the board. However, people that avoid taxes, there should be higher penalties and stiffer fines. So I'm not necessarily against taxing the super wealthy, but to what end? If you tax Elon Musk too much, you know, he might pull back on some of his endeavor and not be able to buy Twitter or whatever. So there could be ramifications. Wall Street Journal is reporting U.S. economy grew at a robust 2.8% in second quarter. GDP second quarter marks a sharp acceleration from the first quarter. That's fine. But what I'm saying is, and what I've stated in the past, if your GDP is not bigger than the inflation rate, it doesn't matter. It's a moot point. GDP has to be greater than inflation, even to maintain. So if you're not maintaining the house of cards, the economic house of cards, is susceptible to collapse. So we're about break even now, so that doesn't matter. I haven't seen the last inflation report, so I don't know. New York Post, CrowdStrike explains disastrous bug that caused global tech meltdown last week. The faulty CrowdStrike software update, and people didn't like that I said that, but it was exactly what it is, that caused a global computer meltdown last week was sent out because of a bug in its quality control system. The very tool meant to prevent such mistakes from happening in the first place, said the cybersecurity giant. I told you, it's a virus, it's a bug, it's not a glitch. It was a virus in CrowdStrike. Now, did CrowdStrike put it there? Who put it there? Who put it? It was so it wasn't in the security software itself. It was in the quality control software that was what? How did the quality control software should look at the update before it goes out? How did the quality control software, it automatically put a bug in the because the bug had to be in the update, the virus. So we don't know what those of us in the conspiracy realm believe is that this was a beta test to see if you put a bug in, it's a cyber attack. It is a cyber attack of sorts, but they're claiming that it's a glitch. It's a development glitch. It's just, that's not the case. More disturbing news, that this is a beta attack because we're getting set up for what's happening this fall, which is going to be the end. Unfortunately, I predict Kamala Harris will be elected president, probably through fraud. She might very well be the whore of Babylon. And then everything is going to cascade from there during a chaotic time. That's just my prediction. I hope that doesn't come to pass. I hope Trump is elected and we can get back on track. However, one more disturbing headline from the New York Post. Shoplifting skyrockets by 24% across the U.S., even as most other crimes fall to pre-pandemic levels. They keep cheating the crime data because they're not reporting crime. Shoplifting skyrockets by 24%. This is because of non-prosecutorial approach to crime, that if you know that you're not going to get arrested or put in jail if you're shoplifting less than $900, then you will go shoplift. There are videos from New York to Philadelphia to San Francisco to everywhere where people just walk into a drugstore, Walgreens or CVS, that's why they're closing so many shops. They just get a garbage bag, they fill it up, and they just walk out the store, and nothing happens. And employees have even been fired from retailers for reporting shoplifting to police. So what does that mean? It's the broken windows thing. If you don't police small quality of life crime, it's going to go rampant. And sometimes there's no indication of this statistically, but it can lead to violent crime. But realistically, violent crime and petty crime are two different things. They're committed by different people in the most part, and so that you can't reconcile those two data points. The problem is that shoplifting is also a result of poor economics. So I think that's it for me. Sorry I had a late start today. I got up late, but this is a short podcast, a short episode today. This is probably because it's slow news, relatively slow news, because they want to keep room for Kamala Harris. And so if there was a lot of other news happening, Kamala Harris stories wouldn't get play. So they're tamping down the news cycle so the wonderful accolades that Kamala Harris is getting can get some traction. They're actually not getting traction because nobody cares about Kamala Harris. I'm sorry to say, nobody cares about Kamala Harris. So most people don't care about politics, and she's very uninteresting. More people like Trump than they like her. And remember, when she ran for the Democratic nomination, she didn't even break 2 or 3%. So she's not very well liked. She's had 92% turnover from staff. She's not a serious person. She's not an intellect. She should never be commander-in-chief of the most powerful nation in the world. But like I said previously, my wife was arguing with people on Facebook about, you know, Kamala Harris and that she deserves a chance because she's a woman of color. And this is not, you know, you're not giving somebody a chance to be, you know, principal for a day or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not, hey, you know, we'll let you try it out. You're not trying out with the leader of the free world who has, you know, the nuclear football. That's just not a tryout period. This is somebody who's been vetted and tested, as Donald Trump has. So I hope indeed that he's elected. Remind you again to engage the channel, like, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, share the podcast. Don't forget, you're under attack biologically with the food you eat, the air you breathe, the things you drink, and psychologically every day, more particularly with the propaganda surrounding the gaslighting of the propaganda about Kamala Harris, that somehow she's some great figure now after she's been panned by most people that are politically inclined. So also join me on social media, Get Our Minds, Facebook, X, Substack, Truth Social, Instagram. Stay hip to the trick. I'll see you tomorrow. Respect.
This is all a conspiracy. Don't you know that it's a conspiracy?
The New World Order